glycogen? So if I was to say liver glycogen, and muscle glycogen, storage form of glucose in our bodies. That's the main function of glycogen. Know what carb loading is. What is carb loading? He needs to answer that.
How do you spell that?
Carbohydrate loading. Carb loading.
Eating a lot of carbohydrates.
Why? And when? And who does this? No. No, they don't. They load up on protein. But if I am like a triathlon athlete and I want to perform well in my event, I'm going to carb load, right? I'm going to load up on carb load like a week or so before my event. And so that I'm going to build up this extra store of glycogen and other carbohydrates in my system so I have a readily available energy I can burn over a long period of time. That's why we do carb loading, not we. They do carb loading. So know what carb loading is. It's a technique that athletes use before performances to load up on carbohydrates to have a readily available store of energy in the form of glycogen. Okay? What is gluconeogenesis? Gluconeogenesis. So we know what gluco kind of stands for, like glucagon or glucose, right? So in neogenesis, neo meaning new, genesis meaning generation of or making of. So it's the making of new glucose. And how does that occur? Not very carefully. It's kind of haphazardly sometimes because you may have a low carbohydrate diet and you need to make glucose. Okay? What organ participates in gluconeogenesis?
Liver.
Liver. Okay. And so we are. And where does this gluconeogenesis come from? What nutrient? Of the three nutrients that we've been talking about. Protein. Okay. So the amino acids are going to be sacrificed. That carbon hydrogen backbone is going to be sacrificed to start making glucose. Okay? Now, role of insulin and glucagon. Now you can answer
Well, I guess insulin is to lower your blood sugar level and glucagon is to raise it.
Okay, so when I eat a meal and I have this high amount of glucose in my system, I'm going to need to lower that glucose level. So my pancreas will release insulin to lower the glucose level. Now, say for instance, I've been hanging out here all day, haven't eaten anything, and my glucose level is low, and I need to stave off being hypoglycemic. Glucagon is released in order to take the glycogen that's been stored in the liver and cause that to become blood glucose and raise my glucose level in my blood. And so they are helping to regulate your blood glucose. Know the difference between glycemic load and glycemic index. What's the difference between glycemic load and glycemic index? Well, I mean, it affects your blood sugar. But how does it affect your blood sugar? And so if I'm looking at my glycemic index, which I'm pretty sure you've seen on commercials, glycemic index is the food's potential to raise your blood glucose level, right? So if you have foods that are high in glycemic index, they're gonna cause that sudden surge. Like if I ate a Snickers bar, like on the commercial, it's gonna raise my glycemic index temporarily. So it's going to trigger a large increase in insulin, and that's gonna be followed by what? What happens if I just eat that Snickers bar and I got my energy, and then what's gonna happen?
Crash.
You're gonna crash, okay? So it causes a dramatic fall in blood glucose. And so foods that have a low glycemic index are going to cause a low to moderate fluctuation in. So by eating food that has a low glycemic index, I'm going to be able to carry off that energy for a longer period of time and not going to have this huge spike. So what is the glycemic load? Glycemic load is used to determine the effect of that food on the person's glucose response. And so when we're looking at grams of carbohydrate in the food, we're going to multiply that by the glycemic index, its ability to raise it. And so your glycemic index and glycemic load, you use those together to determine the effect of that food on your glucose response. Okay, know how much energy is provided by carbohydrates in kcals. It's going to ask you in kcals. 4 kcals per gram. Why are ketones produced? Why are ketones produced? What is broken down to form ketones? Fat. Fat breakdown during fasting is going to form ketones. If you have an excess of ketones in your blood, it's going to cause blood acidity. And that is going to be called what? Ketoacidosis. Okay? Which probably is going to be the next question, right? Is it? Yes, that was the next question. You know why ketoacidosis occurs? Because when you have an accumulation of ketones, then it's going to cause the acidic nature in your blood to raise, and you're going to have ketoacidosis. Know about diverticulosis. What is diverticulosis?
Where the hostas or in the houses in the colon get inflamed and then stuff gets trapped in there.
Okay, the hostas or in your large intestine become inflamed and bulge out, usually caused by amount of pressure in your colon because you're trying to put things out, and you have this pressure that's built up. Know the RDA for carbohydrates. What's the recommended daily allowance for carbohydrates?
I think it's like
130 grams per day. So you should only be taking in 130 grams per day. Let's see. Know the difference between nutrient and non-nutrient sweeteners. What's the difference between nutrient and non-nutrient sweeteners? That should be kind of easy. Okay, nutrient sweeteners are going to be able to provide energy. They're going to provide that 4 kcals per gram. Then you have the slow absorbing sugar alcohol, because that's the question that we ask later on. What is a sugar alcohol? Sugar alcohol is a slow absorbing sugar that is going to only provide 2 to 3 kcals per gram. Now your non-nutritive are not going to produce any energy at all. Okay? Who do we normally give non-nutritive sweeteners to? Diabetics and people who need to keep their blood sugar low. Okay? Know the facts about type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Okay? with type 1, type 2 diabetes, type 1 is what you're born with, okay? And type 1, what's the characteristic of its diabetes?
It can't be controlled
What's
by-
that?
It cannot be controlled by diet.
No, it cannot be controlled by diet because the pancreas is either not producing or not producing enough insulin. And so you have to take in insulin after every meal in order to bring your glucose, your blood glucose down. Now, with type 2 diabetes, it's characterized by the fact that you have insulin intolerance. Meaning you might produce enough insulin or not produce enough insulin, but the thing is, the insulin that you're producing is not efficient. So you have intolerance of that insulin. And it is completely avoidable because it is related to diet, exercise, and lifestyle, whereas type 1 diabetes is associated with having an autoimmune disease. Okay? Know the difference between hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia. That's another easy one, right? Hyper is what? High blood sugar. Hypo is low blood sugar. And then when it comes to hypoglycemia, what are the two things that might cause you to have hypoglycemia? Okay, you might have a rush or too much insulin being produced. You gotta go to? Okay. You have two types. You got reactive and you got fasting. Reactive is where your pancreas is going to secrete too much insulin after a high carbohydrate diet. Fasting hypoglycemia is where the pancreas produces too much insulin even though you have not eaten anything at all. Okay? So know the difference between reactive and fasting hypoglycemia. All right? Know which carbohydrates is used primarily by the brain and the red blood cells. Glucose is the primary one to be used. Know the storage form of glucose in humans. I covered that earlier. It's glycogen. Okay? What is the AMDR of carbohydrates? 45 to 60% of your diet needs to come from carbohydrates. Know the equivalent of 1 drink of alcohol. That brings us to 4.5 now. What is the, okay, what's the equivalent of 1 drink of alcohol for beer? Huh? 1? No. 12 ounces. What about for a shot of, bless you, of hard alcohol?
1.5.
1.5 ounces, right? What about for wine? 4 ounces? And what about, no, I'm not even gonna go about wine coolers, I'm not even gonna ask that question.
So,
I don't know, is it 10?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
2 less than the other one.
Okay. Know the definition of moderate alcohol consumption for men and women. Definition of moderate alcohol consumption for men and women. How many drinks a day should men drink?
2.
2. How many drinks a day should women have?
1.
1. I know it's funny. And we know why, right?
Women can't handle alcohol?
Not because they cannot handle it, it's because physiologically they do not absorb and digest the alcohol in their stomach as much as we do. That means that the majority of that alcohol content just goes right on through, okay? Okay. Alcohol provides how much energy in kcals?
None.
Huh? I mean none.
7.
7. That's the odd one. Because fats produce 9 kcals, carbohydrates and proteins both provide 4, and alcohol actually gives you some energy at 7 kcals per day. Alcohol is absorbed directly from the small intestine and the what? Absorbed, not processed or metabolized. The stomach.